So I was having quite an interesting conversation with a really good friend this week, and she started sharing with me a situation she'd been in where she just felt so triggered by, again, by ex similar to what we spoke about last week, by external circumstances. And as we were sort of unpacking this and, talking about it, she asked such a brilliant question
Mm.
that I think is so worth talking about. So the question she asked is, what am I leaking?
Oh.
And yeah, like what am I leaking out and how do I fill up on on things I'm choosing to fill up on so that whatever leaks out of me is
Mm.
actually aligned with who I want to be.
That there is a brilliant question.
Yeah, and it's funny because it reminded me just last week as well. I was standing in line
Yeah.
at the grocery store, and this young couple was standing in front of me with a little toddler, and this mum, uh, she obviously had, I don't know, hadn't slept, maybe,
Hmm.
was at the end of herself, and
Hmm.
just, being an observer, what was leaking out,
Mm.
it was actually quite hard to observe. And I just wanted to, part of me wanted just to shake her and go, lady, pull yourself together. And part of me just wanted to hug her and go, my dear, you
Yes.
obviously just need a big
Had a
hug.
really rough, rough
You've had a
night, rough
really,
day. And we've
and
all
so,
been there, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think just remembering and recognizing again that we're all constantly leaking stuff out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And how many times, I haven't paused to think about this for a long time. And I think this is a really great time to pause and go, okay, what am I leaking out? When I'm picking my kids up from school or I'm showing up to work with clients or I'm doing the grocery shopping and running
Yeah.
late to places, while I'm cooking dinner or sitting around the dinner table with family, what am I leaking out?
Yeah.
Brilliant question to firstly pause and think about that for a minute.
Oh,
Hmm.
I'm just thinking of, yeah, as you say, running late to things. And if I'm in a car on my way to somewhere and running late, uh, gosh, it's almost like, that's the trigger right there. And there's a pattern of what leaks out then. And it's not pretty.
Yeah, and I can tell when things aren't, when I'm feeling a bit under pressure because when I take the dogs for a walk, what leaks out is sometimes frustration in my voice when they do really dumb things like get tangled up in their leads. You
Oh,
know,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
what
And
am
I
I
think to
leaking
just
out?
realize, what I loved by this question, and it's had me thinking since this conversation, it was about 2 or 3 days ago, is that whatever's leaking out
Mm,
gives insight to what's inside of us.
100%.
And what's inside of us gives its insight to what are
What's leaking
we,
out?
well, what are we
Well,
putting inside of us?
yes. Yeah, okay.
And how often I know. And also, once sorry, digressing a bit, but I was once at a conference and this beautiful lady presenting at this conference, it was a women's conference, got all the women in the room, and then it must have been about, I don't know, about 500 of us to
Okay.
stand up, and we held our arms out in front of us sort of to make a circle. So if I'm doing it right now, but your arms as
Yeah,
a circle in front of you.
yeah.
And she said, imagine look down through your arms, and now that's a bucket.
Yeah, okay.
And she said, what women tend to do, and I mean, I know I'm generalizing, there
Mm-hmm.
are men that do this too. What people tend to
Mm-hmm.
do is we like put our hand in and we pull stuff out of this bucket and we give out of this bucket,
Yeah.
all day, every day.
Yeah.
And how often we forget
Mm.
to put stuff into the bucket,
Mm-hmm.
and how often we end up scraping from the bottom of the barrel to
Mm.
find stuff to give out, because by nature we want to give out,
Yeah.
but we're just giving out from an empty bucket or from a irritable bucket or a frustrated bucket or a,
Well,
whatever.
when it's
Yeah.
empty as well, that it becomes that, right? It becomes
Yeah.
irritable. That's what happens. That's the nature of it.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but
yeah,
if we're
for
putting
sure.
in irritability, if we're putting in negativity, if we're putting in victim like thinking, if we're putting those things in, obviously that's going to come out. But when we're empty as well, that's
Yeah. And I remember when I first started in this coaching space, the notion of putting stuff into my bucket, like self-care and
you're
just
like
felt
blah
so,
blah.
yeah, it did. It felt so blah, blah, blah and wishy-washy and like, oh my gosh, is this that bandwagon? Was where
Yeah,
my thinking went, not
yeah.
realizing actually
Mm,
how important. I
yeah,
mean, like we've spoken before in a previous podcast about gratitude. And
yeah.
I remember even thinking it for a stage, how important is gratitude really?
Mm.
Well, hello.
Hello. And it's a biblical principle. There's
Yeah.
verses after verses telling us to think about all of the, wonderful things and to consider all the goodness and to ponder, all the things that God has done. Because it causes us to have a grateful heart, which causes us to leak some gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Which reminds me, and if you're listening to this and faith is a touchy subject or not for you, I still think this is relevant in everybody's life.
Yes, agreed.
And I've just reminded myself. So there is a scripture, and I've got it written down here because I was looking at it the other day, and I loved the wording here. So the scripture, it's in Philippians 4, and it
Mm,
reminds us to let joy overflow.
mm,
Um, I'm just it says let gratitude overflow,
mm,
like you were sharing.
mm.
Um, let understanding overflow.
Yeah.
Uh, being authentic and being real. Don't be pulled in every direction with worry. Um,
Yeah,
it's easier said than done for sure.
yeah.
But there's so much good. Uh, I don't want to use the word advice because I know in coaching we're not about giving advice, but there's so many good, like go where the life is. How do we
Yeah.
go where the life is? Well, it's spelled out for us here. For starters, be cheerful and joyous in every season of life is what it says, and let joy overflow.
Yeah.
So how do we let joy overflow?
Mm.
And it's that choice to be joyful, which, on some days it's easier than others, isn't it?
Agreed. Agreed. And I think it has to stem from the fact that we are intentionally choosing it every day. And, we
Yeah.
might not feel it because sometimes our state isn't there. Our mind isn't there. It's filled with other things. But when we realize it's really good for us,
Yeah.
and we can go after where the life is and we can choose it naturally. We don't have to worry about how then it flows, but we have to worry about putting it in ourselves first.
Yeah, because then I also heard someone share ages ago on a podcast I was listening to about our life being like a tube of toothpaste. It says, and then the guy was actually so funny. He was sort of sharing how many couples, squeeze the toothpaste tube differently. Do you squeeze it from the bottom or do you just, like roll it
Just go
neatly or just,
anywhere
from the top or the middle? And he said it actually doesn't matter how you squeeze the toothpaste tube because what's going to come out of the tube
is
is
toothpaste.
toothpaste. And
Hmm.
he said, like whatever's inside of you,
Yeah.
and he said and it's often when life gets to the point of being squeezed, when we're
Yeah.
in a station where, in a situation where we feel like we're being squeezed, that's
Hmm.
when uh, we become really aware of what's inside of us, because what's inside is going to come out.
It is going to come out.
Yeah,
Yeah. I often bring this up with my children with, things about what they're watching on TV or the
yeah,
music they're listening to. So it's easy for me to point it out to them and go, yeah, you probably shouldn't be watching that, da 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 da, because what goes in comes out. How
yeah,
many times have we said that or heard that said, what goes in comes out?
it comes out.
But how
Yeah,
true is it? What goes in will come out, will leak out of our lives. And I guess the question here then is, Kath, what do we want to leak out? Like
yeah. And
how,
I'm just listening to you and I'm just thinking in my own life, and it's one of these things where we can have all the best intentions in the world. Like how many times have I said to myself, Kath, I'm not going to start my day picking up my phone
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and going straight to my emails or social media, and
Yeah.
and so I have got all the greatest intentions to
Mm.
not start my day there.
Mm.
And yet how often I catch myself starting my
Wow.
day there because I've got, like as many of us do, things tracking on my phone, and I've been struggling. Well, sleep has been a challenge for me over the last,
Okay.
since menopause, putting it out there. But anyway, so I'm now tracking sleep, and so I get up in the morning and I open my phone to
You
track
want to,
like how did I sleep,
yeah.
which then just I'm recognizing as I'm just sharing this with you that that's not a helpful thing. And so even choosing, you know what, I can still check at my phone later in the day to see
Mm.
how that sleep was, and
Mm.
how easy it is to have all the good intentions in the world to do things differently, and
Mm.
yet we still
Mm.
do things which on some level we just know maybe is not filling
It's
us up
helpful.
with
Mm.
the most helpful stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And I wonder though if that's because it's just the easier habit to do, because being intentional about filling ourselves with what we should do takes a bit more thought. We have to activate something. We have to do something. For some reason,
Yeah.
for me, it's turning over, hitting the alarm if I manage to sleep to my alarm, turning that off. I guess it's easier to just go then with the flow rather than intentionally reminding ourselves, oh, that's right, I'm filling myself up today on gratitude, and I'm going to read, I'm going to
Yeah.
pray, I'm going to do all these other things. I'm going to go out and get the sun on my face
Eyes.
and
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
get my circadian rhythm. All these things that we know are good for us.
So interesting, just listening to you share. I was also listening to another podcast this week, and I've shared about him before, Richard Boyatzis, who
mm,
he's just his book came out last year, and he was being interviewed on a podcast, and he is a professor at a university in America. I'm going to get the name mixed up if I give it to you now, but he's kind of the world leader in change, like sustainable change. Like, how do
mm,
we help people make sustainable change? And what stuck with me that he shared that day was interesting, was he said the moment we say I should
mm,
do X, Y, and Z, he said we're actually, he didn't quite use this language, but it kind of implied that we're moving in the opposite direction of sustained change. We're kind of fighting with ourselves in a way to make the change. So like I have these thoughts of I should
mm,
leave my phone and not
mm,
pick up my phone first thing in the morning, or I shouldn't go to my phone. But changing that language to I want to,
mm,
and recognizing, is that honest? Is it something I really want to do,
mm,
to practice filling up on gratitude, or different things, because how often do we say, oh, I should exercise more,
mm,
or I should be more healthy in my
mm,
food choices.
mhm,
And he was explaining how, and how easy that is when it's easy, and how
mhm.
many of us get this right day 2, day 3, day 4, and then something happens at work and somebody gets angry with you, or you're angry with your kids, or and then all that stuff just
Goes out the window.
goes out the window. Yeah. So I think it's easier said than done, this what are we
Agreed.
filling up on, and the choices. And I think you are so right. It's by asking ourselves, I think it comes back to, who do I want to be,
Yes.
and how do I want to be, and how important is that to me?
Mm,
And if it's really something that I want, like really heartfelt, like I
mm,
want to be someone who overflows with more gratitude or joy, then it becomes less of a, I should do this because it's a
yes.
good thing to do, but I actually want to do this.
Yes. And
And
there
it
in
excites me
that,
to do this.
that's right.
Yeah.
And that's where you've made a definite decision. There's a
Yeah.
moment then, if we want something, we'll go get it.
Yeah.
If we think we should, eh, maybe. And I hear that sort of language all the time. So, working with people in rehabilitation and in
Yeah,
prison as well, right?
yeah,
How many times do I hear the language, "Oh, I don't think I'll be back. I'm not so sure." Yeah, and you
yeah.
hear that wishy-washy language. I know. I know how it's going to play out because there's not the decision, the language, that heartfelt, no matter what comes my way, this is how I'm going to live. And
It's
I
like that.
see the difference.
Yeah, it's like that you've resolved to do something. And I'm
And
I'm
yeah.
just smiling because back to that scripture we were making reference to just now, in that same passage, Philippians 4:6 says, don't be pulled in different directions.
Mm,
And I think that's what that language of uncertainty is. It's
yeah.
I don't think so, or I
Mm,
should, or it's that I haven't quite resolved and
yeah.
made the decision.
Yeah.
Um, some part of your brain wants to make that decision, but some part of your brain is like, oh, but it's just still
Mm,
too,
yeah.
too comfortable on the other side or
For
whatever.
whatever
Yeah,
reason. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
even just listening to your sharing before we came on air today, I hope, yeah, I hope you don't
Mm,
mind me sharing.
mm.
You were just sharing that you haven't been feeling that great of late,
No, no.
and you've been sharing that because of your symptoms, you've been sticking to whole foods and, not having any sweet things and just, and I'm here listening and going, gosh, that takes so much willpower. But you
Mm,
have this absolute desire to be well and to feel
mm,
your best.
yeah.
And so what I'm hearing as you were sharing earlier is that it's you've chosen that
Mm,
until you've come to the bottom of this,
mm,
you're going to do what you can do
yeah.
to feel good again.
Yeah.
And so you've chosen, and it's not a case of, oh, I might just eat clean today.
Mm.
You've absolutely decided this is what you're doing,
Mm.
and good on you.
I hadn't really thought about it like that because you know what? Because often when we decide to sort of change, our eating or whatever, we just in our mindset it's still kind of, oh, I'll do a diet or I should be healthier, I should da da da.
Mm,
This hasn't been difficult for me over the last 3 weeks or whatever. I've been very intentional about what goes in my mouth. It's just been, you know what? I know what needs to go in my mouth. I'm just going to do it. And it
yeah.
hasn't, it's taken a bit more intentionality. I even said no. Okay, so one of my favorite foods is pizza. I don't know. I
Okay.
think I've shared before. I must be Italian deep down because I love Italian food. And we went to the PM service at church a couple of weeks ago, and they were doing free pizza, and not just free crummy pizza. It was the best pizza in Townsville, my favorite. And I was like, no, I don't even, and I can joke about it now saying, oh, it was a big decision, but it wasn't. It actually wasn't. I saw the
Yeah,
queue up for it. I could smell it, but I had resolved in my heart, no, I want to do this because I want to do my part
yeah.
of the journey. So yeah, it is
Yeah.
true.
So there's a huge difference between knowing truthfully on the inside you want to do something versus on the inside going, oh, I should do
Mm,
this because this I know this is good for me. And
yeah.
that's what this Richard Boyatzis was saying, you're
Yeah,
sharing. And
cool.
it takes uh pausing and that this whole notion of pausing and slowing down and considering, and like you said, you've made a decision to be intentional
Mm,
about um eating clean so that you can feel great
mm,
again.
mm,
And yeah, so I think my challenge, if you listen, I mean, well, my, encouragement, if you're listening to this, I suppose, is um, yeah, what leaks out of us
mm,
has got to do with what we're filling up on.
mm,
And it's not even a case of a should thing, like I should
mm.
fill up on gratitude, I should fill up on. It's, my encouragement is, what do you want to fill up on?
Yes.
Because what do you
What do you want to
really, truly
look?
want to leak out?
Yeah, in the world, wherever you go, because one thing's
Yeah,
certain, no matter where we go, we take ourselves with us.
yeah,
There's no
yeah.
escaping it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And some days we're going to get it right and some days
Yes,
not.
of
But I
course.
think so long as we've being more intentional and mindful and choosing because that's who we want to be. And that
Yeah.
sits right, it's like congruent on the inside of us,
Mm.
then we've got a way better chance of actually being that. So,
Agreed.
yeah,
Love it. What a great conversation. So, um, I'm going to consider this over the next few days and pay attention to what's leaking out because I love
me
that
too.
question and go,
Yeah,
okay, because it's also helpful to think, okay, well, what are other people witnessing leaking out? So not just what I'm experiencing, how is it also received? Like what
yeah,
is true? What is really leaking out? Because I'm going to take notice. And then also really consider, and what do I want it to look like? What do I want it to
yeah,
be? Great conversation today. I hope everybody tuning in today has, you know, has decided in their heart to pause as well and think about it for themselves, because it's worth our time. It's worth taking
yeah.
notice of these things.
And if
Mm,
you're recognizing that what's leaking out is not what you would like to leak out, and yet you still feel that
mm,
it's a struggle for you, and making the change
yeah,
is hard,
yeah.
then again, join us inside the membership.
Mm,
These are the
mm,
conversations we love to have in our group coaching sessions. And we don't only want to be people who talk about this stuff, we want to actually encourage each other to go where the life is and to
yeah,
live the kind of life where you feel that you're living brave, strong, and fulfilled. And
perfect.
so in the show notes is how to join us in the membership if you're
Yeah.
keen. And we'd love to have you there.
We would. We really would. Well, I think that's been a great conversation. Thanks for the chat, Kath. Always love chatting with you and considering all of these kind of things in my own life personally. And so, yeah, so thanks for showing up and we'll do it all again next week.
Yeah. See you next week,
Have a
Al.
blessed week.